All right, now on the timeline we have everything the way we want it. We have the sketch first, then lines gonna appear, then shadows are gonna appear, then color, then sky with color, and then people with sky and color. Now we need to make the transitions. We don't want them to jump like that. Did it move? No, it's fine. Okay, so to do that, each layer, here are the layers, right, that represent the layers on the palette. If we click on this little icon here, we can open the options for animation or for animation on our timeline. Okay, so what we want is for the sketch to appear from, it's going to be white, it's going to appear, stay at full color or full, we can see it, it can be viewed 100%, and then it's going to fade out. Okay, and then once it starts fading out, this one is going to come in. So we're going to have to pull this one in a little bit, but we'll do that in a bit. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, you have worked with something that we need to do it here again. When we worked on these people here, I showed you that you can lower the opacity. See how that it's kind of transparent, and we did that with opacity. I told you can come here, you can go to properties, and you can lower the opacity. What opacity does is that you can make that transparent as you need to. Okay, I think I had 75. So we're going to use opacity now for our animation in Photoshop. So we'll go back to Photoshop. Now how do we do that? Notice that one of the options is opacity. Okay, we're gonna create some keyframes so we can control the opacity on this image. Okay, and to do that, this here's opacity. We're gonna work with opacity now. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a new keyframe right at the beginning by clicking this point right there. Okay, notice in the timeline here in opacity, it created a keyframe. Now I can control the opacity because that's where it's selected on that keyframe. Okay, but before I do that, and let me go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in a little more. Okay, so I'm gonna go maybe to frame 10 right there, and I'm gonna create another keyframe by clicking this icon here. All right, so now I have two keyframes in which I can control the opacity on. So I can control the keyframe, the opacity on this keyframe and the opacity on this keyframe. Okay, so when the animation gets to this point, I want for it to be 100%, just like this. But when it starts, I want for it to be not visual. So if I select that keyframe, okay, I'm going to come to opacity, and I'm going to lower it to 0. So what it's going to do is going to do a transition. It's going to go from, on this keyframe, I want it at 0, and it's going to go, oops, it went the opposite. Did it do the opposite? Okay, let's try it again. Keyframe, bring it to 0. There we go. That's what we want. Okay, so notice what it's going to be doing. This keyframe that I put 0 on opacity. This second keyframe, I'm going to do it again. Undo. The second keyframe, it's at 100%. So it's going from 0, I did it again, bring it down to 0. So it's going to go from 0 to 100%. Okay. Now I'm going to take it all the way to 20. Actually should be, no, it's about the same length. So you can eyeball it there. So see that space from there to there. The beginning is more or less same thing at the end. I'm going to put another keyframe there. And I'm going to leave that at 100 because I want for it to appear 0 from in between these two keyframes. I want for the opacity to go from 0 to 100, stay at 100, and then from this point I want for it to go back to 0. Now I'm going to put it at the end. You don't have to create a keyframe here necessarily. If you put it on this timeline, on this time, with layer selected, if I go to opacity and just bring it down, automatically it's gonna give me a keyframe. So now it's gonna appear, stay on, disappear. Okay, but if we leave it like that, it's gonna still jump. We don't want that. We want for lines to appear when this is disappearing. So what do? We grab this and pull it in. So now it's gonna do a gradual change. Okay, now it's jumping in because we want to do the same thing with with lines now. Okay, and again, here's where you're gonna. It doesn't have to be specific where I have it. Here is where you decide where to put it. You're doing the animation now. So now let me open lines. So lines, once it gets to that point, actually I might need to pull it out a little more. About there. So I'm going to do the same thing with lines. I want for them to start appearing. While the other one's disappearing, lines are going to start appearing. Okay, so I'll do the same thing. So I'm going to go to the beginning of lines, put a keyframe. More or less around here is where I want them to be visual. So I'm going to put a keyframe there too. And now to this keyframe, just same steps. With lines, make sure you move this over here. This keyframe, oh, it's not letting me because I had locked it. Just unlock it, there you go. So if you locked it, if you didn't, then you should be able to. So I'm going to lower the opacity. So now it's going to be doing this. It's going to start disappearing, and the lines are going to start appearing. See, so it's more settled now. Sketch disappears, lines start to appear. Okay, that's what we want. Now I'm going to do the same thing, take it towards the end. I'm going to put a keyframe, and then at the end I'm going to lower the opacity so that automatically gives it I think you're too far away or too zoomed out. There we go. Put it right here, and the opacity, it's gonna be going down to 0. And also you can move this keyframes and the time. So now this is gonna disappear, and then same thing. Now I'm gonna go to lines, open shadows, and I'm gonna bring this in, and I'm gonna show on the opacity. I want to create a keyframe, and then pull it in, more or less around there, so it does a transition. So another keyframe there, and then this first keyframe is gonna be, oops, I moved it. Is gonna be, well, it's fine, 0. So that here is going to start disappearing and shadows appearing. Okay, I'm going to stop right here. I think you get the point of how to do that. We're playing with, or not playing, we're using opacity and some keyframes. Again, you're going to, since this layers are on the layer palette and you can control the opacity on the layer, we're going to be using that. So it's going to start from 0 keyframe, 100, stays on 100, goes down, and now notice how these two overlap, which we need to, because when the sketch starts disappearing, at this point, notice right here, the lines are going to start appearing, but gradually too. Now, I'm going to open it up. So look at this keyframes, look at this keyframe. So as on sketch is going down and start disappearing, once it gets to this keyframe, lines start appearing. And at this point, sketch is totally gone, lines is 100%. 100%, it gets to this point. Let me turn on shadows. It will let me open up shadow right here. So at this point, lines start disappearing, right? And shadows start appearing from 0 to 100. So as this disappears, shadows start appearing. Okay, do the same transitions now. And here I don't want to do the whole thing. Now do it so that you can see, so it follows the same principle. Appears, no, subtle change. Now play it. If it's too fast, like that one, I think it's too fast. See how they changed way too fast. So what I might need to do in my case, it's maybe make them a little bit longer. So I might need to change the transition here, so it's not as fast. Even this one, maybe I can pull it on more that way. Or maybe I can make even this one longer and pull this one in, so that the transition is not as fast. There you go. It's more subtle now. It's not too jumpy. All right. So play around with that. As a matter of fact, I can pull it out more if I need to. And keep in mind, I'm not giving you a restriction. I think no more than 30 seconds of the whole animation. So you have enough time to play around with it. So you see now, by moving that, it's a lot more subtle. Pretty good. Okay, so play around with the keyframes in the timeline. Okay, if it gets too short, just pull the timeline more to the right of that layer, so you can see it more. Okay, so here is going to be where you have to decide how you're going to play with it. So if it gets too fast, open them up. See how this are way opened or more spaced out, so the transition it's a lot smoother. Notice that. Now this one here, see how close they are? This one and that one. So this transition is a lot fast. It's very fast. It just jumps at you. Boom. While this one, and look at the space compared to that. Look at the space compared to that. These two compared to those two. So look how fast this one is. Boom. This one, more subtle. So play around with that. Okay? So it has to be, in other words, the timing of the transition has to look similar to this one. Subtle. Takes not too jumpy. It's about half a second more or less. Okay? So now do the same thing. From this one, make sure that you have a transition from shadows to color. Same principle. And then also, color is going to stay on. So make sure you have the transition of the sky for it not to jump in, but to blend in or come in. And then same thing with people. I don't want for them to appear. I want them to blend in. So you're going to be adding opacity, keyframes to all of them. Not at the end. Well, not right now. Not at the end. Only the beginning for these three. Appear, subtle appear. Here it goes down. This one appears subtly. And then this one appears from 0 to 100. And then this one appears from 0 to 100. Okay? I'm going to stop it here and then go ahead and do that.